Welcome to East Meets West. And, well, you know, this guy is the host of Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other, and the second most important man from Freehold, New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Nathan.
And he is the 7-time Emmy-winning broadcast journalist, born and raised in beautiful Los Angeles, beautiful Rick Garcia. How you doing, Rick?
Well, I would like to sense a little more passion when you say beautiful California and beautiful Rick Garcia, but was that written for you? Is that why you delivered it that way?
Nah, it just came up. I was thinking about Lori. She's beautiful. I don't know if I would sign that attribution to you, but
listen, it was a beautiful weekend weather-wise in California. Not necessarily the case for those playoff games this weekend. It was a lot of fun. As now, then there were two, right?
Then
so
there were
two teams left in the NFL heading to the Super Bowl. Let's do a little recap on the games that took place. We'll begin with, because I have to, in the interest of full disclosure, we have to remind everybody I'm a huge Rams fan, to say the least. So I'm in the stages.
You're a Rams fan? Wait. I had no idea.
I'm in the stages of mourning. You know what they are: drinking, leave the country. I think the stage I'm in now is scouting the NFL draft for next season. So, are those the stages? I'm not sure, but
you're missing denial. You're missing denial.
No, clearly I am in denial, so I'm not missing that one. Rams lose 31-27. Some folks to Seattle. Some folks say that could have been the Super Bowl. I mean, if the Super Bowl winds up being a blowout, that's how people will look at that game. The Rams had their chances. There was you could put a lot of blame on a muffed punt that they had during the game, but they still had their chances after that. I'm still baffled by what some of these coaches are doing on fourth down. The series before the final series with 25 seconds left, the Rams had a chance to kick a field goal. And I was screaming out loud, kick the field goal, kick the field goal. McVay goes for it on fourth down. Seattle stops the play. And the reason I wanted the field goal there was enough time on the clock, I think about 3 minutes, where it would have made the game a 1-point game. And then you put your trust in your defense that you're going to get the ball back. Now you only have to go 20, 30, 40 yards to try to kick the game-winning field goal.
So speaking of that field goal, I thought the same thing when they were there, but then I rewound to the touchdown they scored right after the unsportsmanlike penalty. And I wondered if there was the aggressiveness on 4th and 4, why wasn't there aggressiveness a couple minutes prior to go for the 2 points after they scored the Puka touchdown, right?
I'm not a 2-point conversion guy, but I think that's a good point. I never really thought of it that way. The 2-point conversions for me, that I think in a game this big, you're conceding the game at that moment if you don't get it.
But here's the thing: if they miss the 2-point there, it's essentially the same game because they still have to score. It's 5 points instead of 4, and they still have to score a touchdown in order to win. And also, if they go and they drive and they get to the 4th and 4 and they kick they still need another field goal to win.
I see what you're saying. I also think there was so much time left. I think they felt like they were going to go down and score again. But listen, the best team won. The Seattle Seahawks won the game. They almost blew the game with that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that you're talking about, because the Rams turned right around and scored after that. But the better team won this game. The Seattle Seahawks did a great job. I think that those were two. Well, I know they were two incredibly matched teams, because every one of their games, they played 3 times this season. Every single game went down to the wire.
Yeah. So within less than 5 points every game, right?
And two teams that have respectable defenses. Seattle number 1 in defense in the NFL, and they gave up 27 points, and they gave up almost 30 points a game against the Rams every time they played them. So any final thoughts on that game as we move on to the AFC Conference Championship?
Where I thought the difference in the game would be is that Shula's defense would expose Darnold for not being the elite level quarterback. I mean, listen, he's established himself as a top, 15, to one of the top 15 quarterbacks in the league, but his mistakes were exposed throughout the season, let alone in the playoffs. But it turns out that it was Kubiak's offense that really won the day over Shula's defense. So that was the biggest surprise to me. And props to Darnold. He had arguably his best game of his career.
He did. And you're right. The The Rams were able to expose him in previous games when he was with Minnesota, and they beat the Vikings in the playoffs a year earlier. He was sacked several times in that game. He threw several interceptions on the regular season in both the two games they played this year, and then seems to have settled down. I get the impression they're not going to put him in a position where he has to win the game for them. And so they do that through their running attack and making sure that their high percentage pass plays for him, and that makes all the difference. So listen, as the coaches like to say, all credit to Seattle. They played a good game.
Yeah, you're being diplomatic. But before we move on to the AFC Championship, as someone who's had to console myself quite a bit over the years, let me just, the Rams are Super Bowl worthy, and they're a couple tweaks away from just being next level. A couple tweaks. I think, for example, one thing I noticed was they really missed Cooper Kupp. They miss a guy who is just a standout on third down, who could go over the middle. It's not to say Puka can't do that, but if Puka's freed up and they have somebody that can go over the middle, like what Cooper had done in prior years. So they're a couple tweaks away on the offense, a couple tweaks away on D. And if they can make a couple of signings, I just think they're next level.
Well, they have a lot of salary cap, and we'll get into that a little bit because the big question mark for them will be the quarterback position. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But you're right. They're right there.
Yeah.
But so much, McVay said it best, you start all over. Like no matter how good they were, no matter how many pieces they have, every season you start over. And things factor into that, like health, like guys not playing as well as they should. I think Devontae Adams was misused in this game, in these last few games. That could have been the Cooper Kupp thing that you're talking about, because I think Puka has done everything and more.
And then some.
I mean, he's taken on Cooper's role and then some. But we're going to talk more about that in a moment when we talk about what's going to happen with the future of the quarterback position for the team. And then you and I both will be in the same boat in the offseason when we start talking about what your Giants and my Rams are doing to make their teams better. In that AFC game, though, with the another snowball, the same thing, better team won. And how can you say, with any sincerity that the Denver Broncos just didn't have a chance without Bo Nix? Though they did, right? They almost were able to pull this off, if not for the poor play of Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah. Yeah. So the loss of Bo Nix really did make a difference. I want to rewind here for a second. Big picture.
Yep. Yes.
How can a city invest $1 billion plus or minus these days in stadiums without investing in a retractable roof? Now, listen, I'm all for these historic games because 5 years from now, we're probably going to remember the AFC playoff game because of this, because of the weather. We won't remember much. I mean, you being a Rams fan, you'll probably remember it, but most football fans will remember the Snow Bowl. They won't remember the NFC Championship game. I just don't understand how a city at this stage and the technology that's available now, how do you invest $1 billion into a stadium without a retractable roof? We didn't watch football.
Well, so some will tell you that is football, right? Rainy,
the same guys
sludgy,
who would say that hockey,
offensive linemen, they're like pigs in slop, right? They love these kinds of games, right? But it's no fun for fans. I agree.
There was a time when purists were saying hockey goalies shouldn't be wearing masks. It's not pure to the. So I mean, get over it. Get over it.
It's time. Listen. I'm with you, and you're right. With the amount of money they're spending now, I would think that their own teams would like to have weather not be a factor in their games. And some will say, well, but that's okay. You're a Giants fan. That's the benefit to being on the East Coast. Is you have the advantage over those wimpy West Coast dudes when they come in and try to play. I'm with you. I'd rather see. Yeah, for the fans, I agree.
For the fan experience, I mean, they're paying, especially for these playoff games. I mean, what is it, $1,000 a seat, $2,000? Yeah, you're paying that much money. You should have a decent fan experience.
Right, right. Except for the one or two guys without their shirts on, right?
That's right.
So the Super Bowl's set. It's the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, which, what a surprise. Well, actually, some might say surprised by, for both teams to be there. And what the job that Vrabel has done over there with New England, incredible. Now we can go back to hating the Patriots again, now that they're playing well. This thing opens with Seattle being 3.5-point favorites. I'm wondering if that has more to do with the location of the game, which is going to be at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, the home of the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to talk about it obviously next week and leading up to the Super Bowl game. As far as predictions, I'm just going to give you one out of the block thought on who the participants are. If you're happy with that, if it can't be your team, in other words, are you happy with this Super Bowl? And then you can get a kind of a pre-pick.
Okay, so this Super Bowl is should just be named the New York Jets Lamentation Super Bowl. Because you got on one side, you got the
Not sure what
Patriots.
that means.
They finally get past the Brady era, the Belichick era, and okay,
Yeah.
so now we at least have a shot. No, Vrabel comes in year one, turns him around
Oh
from
my gosh.
double
Yeah.
digit losses, double digit wins, going to the Super Bowl again. And
Yep.
then you have on the other side of the ball, of course, Sam Darnold, who the incredibly successful coaching stint of Saleh in New York. One of his first decisions was to get rid of Darnold. Now, objectively speaking, I'm not real. My brother's a Jets fan. I'm not a Jets fan. I mean, Darnold had approximately 17 teams in between the Jets and this, plus or minus,
Give
I
or
mean,
take. Yeah.
yeah, give or take. I mean,
Yeah.
Carolina, he was in but a lot of folks don't even realize he was with the 49ers for a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let alone the Vikings and now the Seahawks. So,
Which I will say to you made him better, by the way, playing in the Shanahan system. But go ahead.
oh, absolutely. Being able to sit on the sidelines and just being a really solid professional quarterback room. Absolutely. It all made him better. He wouldn't have been the quarterback if he stayed with the Jets through this whole, because he wouldn't have had the development. He wouldn't have the level
Right.
of coaching been exposed to. But I love the fact that it's the Jets Lamentation Super Bowl. Now, as far as
It is.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say this is the quintessential East meets West, by the way.
Yeah.
So you got the New England states there, and then of course the great Pacific Northwest. So
Yeah, that's
it
right.
doesn't get any more East and West than that, right? But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
As
interrupt you as you were going to give us this amazing, glowing
analysis and
prediction.
forecast.
Yes.
Yeah. So as far as the game itself, I think that Vrabel has proven to have one of the best coaching schemes in the league already, just in his first year with the Pats. I know he had his time previously as a head coach, but I do think that Vrabel's D will expose Darnold. I don't think Darnold is going to have as clean of a game as he had against the Rams. That said, I think Seattle's D will absolutely suffocate the Pats. So I think that what this will come down to is the Patriots will get one or two scores, call it maybe 10 points off of turnovers, because I do think they'll end up forcing a couple of turnovers with Darnold. Plus, their offense isn't completely inept. I think their offense is good for a touchdown or maybe a couple of field goals. That said, Darnold will orchestrate at least three or four really successful drives, resulting in, I say, three touchdowns, a field goal. And then the Seattle will also force a turnover or two. So I think all of that adds up to 34-17. Seattle's winning this one, going away. There is one X factor that I think can make this even more of a blowout. Rashid Shaheed. They have a really stout offense. Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker. Obviously, we talked about Darnold. But all of the attention on the other skilled players leaves this guy as quite a wild card. So I do think it's at the end of the day, Seattle going away.
Good prediction. I'm going to give you a chance to make adjustments because remember the game's 2 weeks out. So we'll have one more show before then. And then you could go back and do some analysis. But I think that was well said. The thing about Shaheed is special teams. That's where he can be the dagger. And he's an important part of the offense now since they brought him over from New Orleans to get rolling. I think that just for my pre thoughts is that I'm with you. Will Vrabel do to Darnold what the Rams have done to Darnold in the past, or has the new Darnold arrived? If this is the real guy, he won't fold under pressure. If they're able to run the ball, if they're able to get some high percentage passes completed, I think Seattle would be the better team. And I think if they can shut down the Patriots' run, as good as I think Drake May is and is going to be for a long time, I think that you put a little more pressure on the young quarterback, right? So at this point, I would give the edge to Seattle, but let's see what you and I both think next week when we have one more show to go.
Yeah, the difference is Kubiak had, two other games to improve his scheme, whereas this is the first time that Darnold is going to be seeing Vrabel's. They didn't play this year. I'm not missing that, right?
I don't believe
Yeah, so
that's a great. We should look that up. I don't believe they have. Yeah,
yeah, so Kubiak was able to make adjustments by the third time they faced the Rams
the
this year,
Rams
whereas this is the
exactly.
first time facing Vrabel's D. So I think that will be a
They'll both
factor.
be in the same boat, I think.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about what's the fallout from some of these playoff games, and some coordinators got fired. The Now you got the Rams sitting there with a quarterback who should be, and by the way, you will hear a rant if Matthew Stafford's not named most valuable player. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's an easy call. Those folks who think that Drake May should win it, he had a great season, not even close. Stafford threw double-digit more touchdowns than Drake May did. So his touchdown to interception ratio was incredible. But anyway, we won't dissect that. The bigger question is, he's 37, going to turn 38. There were thoughts that he might not play with the Rams this year. So they've gone basically year to year with Matthew Stafford and have said to Matthew, here's the situation. What do you want to do? I mean, Stafford has earned that right. Since he's been with him, he's won them a Super Bowl. They've been to several playoff games, and they're going to give him the option to decide, okay, A, do you want to play? B, do you want to play with us? And see, what would it take to make that happen? And the reason they've gone year to year, because at 37, 38 years old, he one hit away from being finished, and we see the decline of the older quarterbacks, the Bradys and the Rodgerses, as they hang around, and then everybody's waiting for them to leave, right? Well, he had an MVP season, whether he gets it or not, right? So it's hard to argue. If you're the team, you want him to stay and maybe give me one more season. So he's going to talk about it with his family. It's emotions, it's family, and then eventually it gets to money, right? And how much are they willing to pay him? I would say to you that is the most important thing that could happen to the Rams, and really the NFC, if Stafford decides to call it quits or go somewhere else.
Yeah, so I don't know Stafford as well as you do, but I'm just looking at the what I do know. 4,700 yards, 46 one of the best quarterback seasons in the history of the league. I mean, even if we cut it off after 16 games, it still would have been about 4,400 yards, over 40 touchdowns, single digit intercept. So he had an MVP season. If he doesn't win the award, I agree with you. It would be a travesty. But the team came up just short. If it was reversed, if the team was performing transcendently and he was the reason they came up just short, he might consider retiring. But I think
Yeah.
because he's still playing at his peak, age is just a number, which I'm going to continue telling myself all day, every day for the rest of it. The grayer I get, the older.
You keep doing that.
But no, he's still. They also have 40 million already assigned to him. So
Yeah.
so
Which is a deal, by the way.
yeah,
Which is a deal by
pretty good
today's
deal.
quarterback standards.
Other
Yeah.
QBs are well over 50 mil. So I think because he still is playing at an absolute elite level, next level, but the team came up just short, he might hold out just to see if they make the tweaks that can
Yeah.
bring them to the promised land. But I really think he's coming back. Everything is in place for him to come back.
Yeah, and you're right. And in your analysis of the team, they need some help in their secondary. They've got $60 million, I think, of cap space, so they can add a free agent. They've got 2 first-round draft picks. They can draft the quarterback of the future, though it turns out that there isn't a good crop of quarterbacks coming out. Preseason, they thought they would all be great, but it turns out a lot of them struggled this year. So they're in a great spot. And if you're him and you still feel good, like you can get out of bed
Yeah.
and walk, I think that it may be an opportunity for him to go out, on top, because they're going to be one of the favorites to wind up in the Super Bowl. No question about that. And by the way, who wouldn't want to play, for Sean McVay, as opposed to anybody else if you're at 37, 38, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to start over somewhere else. All right. Speaking of which, listen, I know you're feeling like a pig in slop with your great hire for your New York Football Giants. Let's get an update on all the coaching hires and stuff because this thing it's getting very interesting. So
Yeah.
the jobs that have been filled, the Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski. Baltimore went after the Chargers defensive
Jesse
coordinator
Minter
Jesse Minter and hired
goes from
him.
one Harbaugh to replace another.
That's right. Buffalo Bills hired Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator. This one a little bit of a surprise. And then Cleveland, the word today is that they're going to hire Todd Monken, who was the offensive coordinator for Buffalo. So he was their rival.
Buffalo. He was for
I'm sorry, Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and their rival. So interesting move. Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator for Green Bay, is now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. The New York Football Giants, their new head coach, John Harbaugh. That's the best hire, without a doubt, this offseason. Here's an interesting one. Pittsburgh hires Mike McCarthy. You talk about retreads. You know, I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in Pittsburgh. Tennessee goes with Robert Saleh, who is the defensive coordinator, of course, for the San Francisco 49ers. So that leaves us with three openings. The Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals. One of the reports I read that the front runner, the leader in the clubhouse, could be Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator.
Okay.
Is one of the guys there. The Las Vegas Raiders are still looking for somebody. So we're down to two teams, right?
Yeah.
By the way, there's a reason these two are open. These are not wonderful situations, either one of these teams.
No.
Now, if you can get a deal where they're going to give you time in Las Vegas, you're going to draft your quarterback. You already have a good running back in the fold who you drafted last year. I think that's a team. Excuse me, it's going to need a little time, but they are. That's not a. I don't think that's a great job either. Any thoughts on those final two openings? I know how you feel about the hires already, or since we last spoke. Any thoughts on the ones that were filled or the jobs that are open?
So the Brady hiring in Buffalo, I can only imagine that was. Excuse me. Technically, it was a promotion. I can only imagine that was a Josh Allen promotion. That just it feels to me counterintuitive. If they're going to make a change, they might as well make a big change. Then again, they're right there. They're right there. So maybe it's just a matter of different voice leading in the room. But that definitely feels like a Josh Allen had influence on that promotion.
Well, the report was that he sat in on the interviews. So
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense because I didn't read that report, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense that he had a lot of influence on the hire on the promotion in this instance.
Yeah.
The one that I was also underwhelmed when I heard Mike McCarthy, but then I remembered McCarthy grew up in Pittsburgh. One of his very first coaching jobs, I don't even know if it was a paid job, is when he was on staff as like a graduate assistant for University of Pittsburgh. So he has a lot of deep roots in Pittsburgh.
Sure.
This was just so out of character, given the last 60 years of Pittsburgh Steelers, who they've hired. It was a little out of character to bring in a retread like that.
Yeah, I felt the same way that you did. And so with the two openings left, Arizona, you don't know what your quarterback situation is going to be there. I don't know that Murray is going to hang around as the QB. He is underwhelmed. That city and his teammates, by the way. And the Raiders, that's a team that down the road we could be talking about. You'd have to get a really long-term contract, though, I think, unless you could turn that around overnight with, free agents and an incredible draft. And that's hard to do. That takes a little bit of time.
You think?
But what about Sean McDermott? He's sitting out there doing nothing.
Oh, McDermott would be a huge hire.
Respectable career.
The Raiders have taken big swings before, but Tom Brady is in the mix. So I don't know. Do you think Belichick and Brady kiss and make up, and Belichick spends another 3, 4, 5 years in Vegas?
I don't know, but the other one that hasn't, the other shoe that hasn't dropped is Clint Kubiak, and by the way, just talking about overall the coaching situation every season. I think it's BS that teams, as they get eliminated, their coaches can start doing interviews, and the guys like Clint Kubiak, who's they're winning and winning, and they're in the Super Bowl, cannot do their in-person interviews. I think the NFL needs to stop all coaching hirings till after the Super Bowl. That once the regular season ends, you wait till the Super Bowl ends, and then let it be a mad scramble to go find the offensive or defensive coordinator of your choice or your head coach. I just think it's unfair to the guys who are, for example, only 2 jobs left.
Right.
Do you think Kubiak wouldn't have liked the Buffalo job?
Yeah.
I mean, so
No, that's totally fair. Either that or be able to assign a day to take your
yeah,
meetings
but
flying the
I don't
country.
want my offensive coordinator using his day off to fly to Baltimore to talk to people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not fair to the teams that are still in the playoffs either, right? Don't you want your guys buckling down and focusing on the game? I think it's a bad situation for NFL teams. I think it's a bad situation for prospective coaches. It's not the end of the world to have everybody wait a couple of more weeks to open up the process. That's my thinking on that. You brought up Bill Belichick. I had to tell you, he's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So when I first heard this story, yes, Bill Belichick of the 8 Super Bowls, 6 as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coordinator for your New York Football Giants, not being a lock to get into the Hall of Fame right off the bat. I thought, this is nuts.
Yeah.
He's the poster child for Hall of Fame coach. And I thought about this, this is ridiculous. And I'm listening to all the feedback from other people and reading the reports and about how disappointed and crazy people think this is. And then as I kind of calmed down a little bit, let the dust settle, and started kind of doing a little bit more reading and research, I had to remind myself that I had forgotten about
Spygate and Deflategate.
Deflategate.
Yeah.
And by the way, Spygate, I believe, affected both of our teams at some point. There were.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The team was accused of it's the same thing that got Michigan coach fired. Is videoing coaches' signals on the sidelines. And in the case of the Super Bowl against the Rams, there were reports they were recording practices that the Patriots coaches were recording their opponents' practices, and in the case of the one accusation that they were filming coaches on the other team and their signals. So that was Spygate, right? And it cost them a draft pick, it cost them lots of money, and in the case of Deflategate, look, a rule is a rule is a rule. And if you're breaking them to get an edge, I'm not saying bending them. If you're breaking a rule to get an edge, you're a cheater. And I don't subscribe to the old expression, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So when I thought about it further, I'm more okay with this. I think he deserves to get in, but I don't have a problem with these Hall of Fame voters saying, we'll wait till the next one, or the next one after that. Your thoughts?
So I have a problem with this. For one, it is the one moment when writers get to assert their influence and put their thumb on the scale of history. But in this instance, I think that writers should be more like refs or umpires in the games themselves. If you're the story, that's a problem. So I do not want writers taking that one moment just to do something for the sake of doing something. In terms of Spygate, I do think it's worth a conversation in terms of Spygate, Deflategate. I just think there's a line somewhere, and this does not cross the threshold of that line. If you remember, one of the greatest coaches in sports history, Red Auerbach. Red Auerbach would do all kinds of things to tilt the play, to tilt the scales a little bit. He would turn off the heat, in the winter. He would turn on the heat
Yes.
in the summer. All kinds of shenanigans he would pull to try to get just a little bit of an edge. I think that Spygate and Deflategate both, even though you could say, okay, it's unfair, even cheating. I just think it's more along the Red Auerbach than say if Pete Rose, for example, was caught betting,
Yeah.
against his own team, something like that.
Well, no, I agree.
definitely
That's
other
the
side that
highest of
line.
standards.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the highest of cheating standards. You bring up two really good points. Let me address each one of those. Listen, getting an edge. Every team's looking under a rock to try to find a way to just kind of twist things a
yeah,
little bit, like you said, to get an edge. Whatever those rules might be. Once you break it, once you've snapped it and you've broken it, like we're going to deflate a football, but the other guys aren't
yeah.
because they're playing fair and
Right.
we're not. It's going to help me be able to throw the ball in the rain. That's cheating. So you've crossed the line. Videotaping practices and other coaches' signs, that's
But
cheating. That's
stealing
not bending
signs.
the rule. That's blowing through.
Okay,
Well,
so again,
stealing
it's
signs. If you're on the sideline and you see
and
somebody doing whatever and you
yeah,
catch
and
it,
you're
oh,
decoding
we
it.
we
Yeah,
see we well you play. You're a poker player, right?
yeah,
There's a tell. I saw the tell, right? Well, the players are looking for tells all the time. Well, this guy always moves to his left, and when he does this, or when they come out of the huddle and he goes that way and then comes back, I know they're running this. That's all above board. But you get a camera out and you're showing up at practice, you're hiding in a tree.
yeah.
That's that's
Actually, that's fair.
cheating.
Okay, so here's a
But let
line.
me
Since
real quick. I want you to hold that thought though.
Yeah,
Hold that thought real quick because I want to address the other point you made
sure.
real quick, and then I want you to come back. Is you mentioned about writers and by the way, somebody who has in my lifetime been yelled at by coaches and by players as a reporter. I can see where reporters get mad at somebody. He's a grumpy grizzly bear, right?
Yeah,
He was the worst guy on the planet to interview after a game, and just because he's so grumpy, I didn't have the good fortune of interviewing him, but I interviewed people like him, and so I know that feeling as a reporter being in there and having him be a you know what.
yeah,
And people are probably not thrilled with his relationship strategies with his 25-year-old girlfriend and things like that who catch more publicity than he does.
yeah,
But to your point, those are not reasons to not vote for him, right? You got to be objective and you look at the numbers. 6 Super Bowls as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coordinator. I don't have a problem with guys looking at the cheating issues, just like they look at the steroid problems in baseball, and saying, you know what? We have to pause here for a second. This guy, you can't just look at the numbers. You got to look at, did he win a couple of those Super Bowls because he was deflating balls and because he was, videoing the other team's practices, right? I mean,
yeah,
maybe he doesn't win 6 Super Bowls.
yeah. I
Take the floor, please.
So first of all, you just reminded me that Eli Manning didn't get in last year, and that one to me, I know that there's a little bit of debate, but the guy won 2 Super Bowls, 2
Yep.
Super Bowl MVPs.
That's enough for me.
When
That's
he
enough for me.
when he
Yeah.
retired, he was in the top 10 both of yards, passing yards as well as touchdowns. But I just want to get that plug in there. If the voting's still
And you
open, I
did.
know it's not. But, anyway,
you did.
but in
Yeah.
terms of Belichick, you make a good point about poker. So again, there's a line somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is, but there's a difference between if I see somebody's cards and I'm at a poker table, I'm going to lean over. He's sitting next to me and he's flashing his cards. I'm going to lean over to him one time and I'll say, "Hey, man, cap your cards." Just to give him the heads up. But if he keeps on flashing his cards, I'm going to be looking at his cards. That's not cheating because I already gave him the heads up. It's fair play. That said, if I have somebody on the other side of the table somewhere with a camera that's trying to, deceptively see somebody's cards on the other side,
Yes,
that's clearly
okay.
the other side
There
of the
you
table.
go.
So,
Have I sold you then that maybe this delay after further review, I threw the red flag out there and I thought I want to review this play one more time. I think the writers got it right.
no,
I know that's not popular. I think he deserves to go in, but maybe a slap on the wrist because of again, would the numbers be what the numbers are in his
now I'm
career
debating
if
it.
not
Now
for
I'm
those
debating it
moments?
because the way I look at Barry Bonds is no, he deserves to be kept out of, not just because of the clear violation of the steroids and performance enhancing drugs, but because of he was like he'd be in the Hall of Fame for jerks. That's the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame that he number one. He'd be enshrined.
There's a player who gave me a hard time during
But
interviews.
the
Go
reason I
ahead.
have pause
Yeah.
with Barry Bonds is that
Yeah.
he would have been a Hall of Famer without the steroids before he even got to the point where he was
Maybe.
he started
Yeah.
bulking up. Same thing with Bill Belichick is, let's say you take away 2 of those Super Bowls. There's still 4 Super Bowls. They take away 3. There's still 3 Super Bowls. Take away what? 100. He's still with 250 wins,
Okay.
And so even if you go to the maximum slash a couple of Super Bowls because of Spygate, Deflategate, slash, 50 wins, 75, he's still a Hall of Famer. So I still have a problem with it.
All right. Hey, you ready to pop that culture?
Let's pop that culture.
Let's do it.
Pop that culture.
And we're going to stick with the coaching theme here too. There was a report that came out. Seattle Seahawks coach Mike McDonald drew some heat because he mentioned he can only spend 30 minutes with his son a week as the team was preparing for the Rams and the playoffs. Before that, the 49ers, and so people are giving him a hard time for as if he's abandoning his family. His son, I think, is about a year old. Here's the thing: if you don't know this about coaches, you should know this about coaches. I used to tell people I eat, drink, and sleep sports. Coaches eat, drink, and sleep sports. I mean, they literally set up beds or cots in their offices, and the game ends on a Sunday. That night, they're going through what did we do wrong, and then the next day, after they talk to their team about what they did wrong, to make corrections, they're moving on to the next game. It is anybody who marries a head football coach or a coach knows that they're going to be a widow.
Yeah.
Baseball widow, football widow, basketball widow, because that's what it takes to be a successful head coach. Now the family part of it and balancing it, and that's why these coaches that have had successful marriages and great families, that part of the job becomes part of what the wife does, is to make sure, okay, so dad is going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and this is our family arrangement, and I'm going to pick up the slack over here, and that's why these wives are so amazing for these football coaches, and the coaches will tell you that if not for the women in their lives, they would not be able to be as successful as they are because of how they have the home set up in a way that the coach can be a coach. Any complaints about this whole thing?
So my biggest complaint is it falls in the category of the infamous Nunya. You know that category? Like,
yeah, of course I do.
None of your business. So every family has to make its own decisions, and there are certain jobs when you have an opportunity that these are the trade-offs, and you're either up for the job and what it requires or you're not. And by the way, it's 17 weeks of the season. I know there's preseason and there's draft and there's all kinds of other, but it's not to say that during the off season, this guy's only spending a half-hour week with his son. But again, this all falls under, this is not he has to make a decision for his family based on what his family's needs are, what his opportunities are. He's not always going to have an opportunity. Let's say he coaches the Seahawks for the next 10 years. He's not always going to be in that position. So, that's his family's decision. Given a great opportunity to coach at the highest levels in the world. So I'm not going to sit here in judgment of this guy.
And every family will make its sacrifices. In one family, the job may be that of a salesman, or their projects takes them around the world or cross country, or overtime, forces you to not be around. And that's what makes partnerships so important. Doesn't matter who's the one staying at home, and making sure that the family structure is hitting on all cylinders. It could be the dad in that case. Most often it falls on the mom in those cases. And so if you have that wonderful partnership, I don't think it's a problem. And so there you have it.
There you have it.
You ready to say goodbye?
Let's say goodbye.
I know it feels like we just got started. I'm Rick Garcia. He's Corey Nathan. It's East meets West. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. And don't forget to let everyone know you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Rick, this was fun.
A lot of fun, Corey. See you next time.
See you next time.